Good to see everybody tonight. So we have kind of a busy agenda. We're going to be joined by Senator Kavanagh, by our state committee member, Joshua Goodman, our male state committee member. Oh, you know, I'm always complaining about that. They finally changed it, so it's male, female, or X. So it's movement.
That's for, I'm not totally sure that that's also for state committee. It's for district leaders.
Right.
I thought it was for state committee too. We can't have X state committees. Okay,
In our party call, they said it was for district leaders.
All right, then I'm going to keep complaining until they change it.
Okay. The progressive, Mary, the Progressive Caucus has been pushing for something like that. Obviously, it hasn't passed yet.
I don't understand why we would change it for district leaders and not for state committee members. People have the same right to be gender neutral or non-binary or whatever. I understand why they started it. They started because it was only men, so I'm glad they included women. And now it's 2023, time to move forward a little bit. That's how I start the recording, so excuse me for that.
So now we can have district leaders of, 2 district leaders of any gender?
No,
they need to be 2 different genders.
Ah.
2 different genders, but the gender categories have expanded.
Right, so not 2 of the same.
Right. So it's a step, you know, it's a baby steps, but I think hopefully a sign of more progress to come.
Can they both be X?
No.
I don't think so.
No, they have to be different.
Yeah, we have some work to do on that. Moving forward, that's all I will say. We have some work to do, and we'll do it.
Mary, when I first got involved as a district leader, they only had males and co-leaders.
Well, and I understand that's why they changed it. I do understand that. And
I
then
was
time
the
to change
days.
again.
Yeah,
What?
I'm just saying that's when we changed it. We forced a change.
Right, and now it's time for a new change. I hear that. I understand the history, and now it's time to put more stuff in history. Okay, so I'm going to do a brief land acknowledgement since so many of us are here, if that's okay. And I want to say that we are in the Lenape-Hoking, the unceded lands of the Lenape people. And let's pause to pay respects to the Lenape past, present, and future. Please take time to consider the legacies of violence, displacement, and forced migration that bring us here today. As part of the Lenape story, all part of the Lenape story, the colonization of this homeland and the erasure of indigenous culture and history. By acknowledging the truth, we hope to make progress in rectifying it for the future. Thank you. So let's begin with who's here. You all know there's an OPA vote. I hope everyone got their link to vote. You can vote anytime between 7 and 9. There are no contentious votes on it. Nobody is challenging other people. It's either yes, we endorse, or no, we don't. I'm sure did everyone get to look at it? Yes, everyone got it? Okay. So I'm going to ask for us to start then with some committee reports. Why don't we start with, I see Sarah's here. Sarah, are you doing it? What's the matter, Bill?
Can you ask someone has their mic on, they're rattling around the kitchen drawer or something.
And
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
So Mary Jo and or Sarah, who's ever going to do the sustainability report, you want to start?
Sure. Mary Jo is going to start, and then I'm going to pick up. So I hand it to Mary Jo.
Fabulous.
Okay, it's going to be brief. There's a store called Precycle. It's in Brooklyn right now. It's a refill shop. It's bulk, so you can take your containers in and refill, fill up your jars. And they are going to open a small shop in Essex Market in mid-March. And you'll be able to bring your own containers to be filled. They won't have a full suite of their products. They'll also have already filled jars that you can take home and use at home and bring back or just keep. I don't know yet about the protocol for that and the payment, what type of products. The stuff that they have in the store in Brooklyn is it's grains, it's pasta, it's nuts. They have yogurts there. They have fruits and vegetables, mostly sourced locally. It's supposed to open in mid-March. They're also looking to open a space in Prospect Heights. So they're expanding. So I'll know more. They said in mid-March, and in the March meeting, I can give an update on that, or it can be sent out with the social media.
Fabulous. Thank you.
And I just dropped a link in the chat if anybody wants to learn more directly from the site. It looks great. I'm going to start with a advocacy win after a lot of pressure from ordinary people like us. Curbside compost, which is the kind that the Department of Sanitation manages in our buildings, is rolling out citywide, universally. It's really good news. And this is after a lot of sustained pressure. Many of us went to an event that Chris Marte's office held about a year ago. Our group was his second meeting in office, and it was specifically about compost. And there are a lot of compost fans around New York City. And now that I've gotten into it, there's like compost enthusiasm. So we like compost as a climate solution because when food scraps go to regular landfill with all the other trash, it becomes super polluting methane, which is one of the worst climate polluters. So instead, when it's turned into compost, it can become food for more soil, healthier soil used in parks. It can be used even as fuel. It's just a much better system to keep it in the nutritional goodness. For Manhattan residents, including us, the rollout is late 2024, which is a while from now. So in the meantime, we on the Lower East Side have a lot of drop-off sites, and I will drop that link in the chat from the LES Ecology Center. Pro tip, I store my scraps in the fridge or freezer and drop it off once a week. All right, next advocacy item, and then I'll hand it over. This is big picture state level advocacy. The group Food and Water Watch organizes focus advocacy on statewide climate issues, and every week features a new issue, often around encouraging usually the governor to reject new polluting fossil fuel infrastructure like pipelines or fracking permits. So the weekly advocacy takes the form of a phone call to the governor's office, and I will put that number in, but if you want to have your pencil handy, it's 877-235-6537. I will drop it. You don't have to memorize it. You call this recorded number. A recording from a volunteer tells you the message for the week, and then that call connects directly to the governor's office. If you've never
Wait, one second. Whoever has talking going on, please mute yourself. Thank you.
If you've never called an elected official before, this is a super low pressure way to do so. The issue is queued up in the opening message. You don't have to be an expert on it. And if you're feeling uncertain, extra bonus, the best part, the governor's line is a voicemail, so you can leave a message. Staffers listen to messages regularly. They tally the issues, and elected officials absolutely take notice of what issues are trending. Since most people don't bother to call their elected officials at all, it only takes a few calls on a single issue to get some attention. Today's weekly call is about a pipeline connector station in Athens, New York. And I will drop that link to the chat. I called right before this meeting to test it out. It took 1 minute, 15 seconds. It's not a big time commitment. So I will drop that in just a moment. And thus ends the Climate and Sustainability Committee meeting update.
Thank you so much. And thank you for such good news. That's a fabulous thing. So Camille, could you please unmute yourself? Or I will do it. There we go. And I'm not sure who is Seaberry. Okay, anyway, I don't mean to mute people to be rude, but there's a lot of background noise. So thank you for the reports, Bill. Do you have a traffic report?
There's not much has changed, except that if you live on the eastern side of Grand Street, I haven't been there yet because I was away, but I hear that the Department of Transportation finally erected some quick curbs between on Grand, between Jackson and Madison. Actually, Jeremy, you live down there. Have you seen them?
Yeah, actually, Bill, I saw them. They have.
Saw them, Kathryn. So that's been something that actually the DOT promised since Margaret Schindler was in office. So Connor Allred in is that his last name? But he's Chris Marte's land use guy. He's been after DOT for like really almost a year since Chris got into office, and so DOT finally came across. Melissa's saying it's going all the way from the FDR to Madison. Oh, that's even better.
Cool.
No,
Yeah.
it's a little bit from Madison east toward the FDR, but it's not the full length.
Okay.
But it's
Well,
great.
It's
because
still,
people
it's
make the left
basically,
turn From
yeah,
like,
sorry, Melissa's saying.
block. So it actually it's very helpful.
I mean, the main part of it is supposed to keep people from going into the oncoming lane to go down Madison to get out of the traffic jam. So if it's doing that, that's great news. But
1 second, there's a hand up, Bill, if that's okay. Harriet?
yeah, Harriet.
Hi, excuse me. When I was at the Wednesday kind of eat at the restaurant, I forgot the
Right.
name of the restaurant on Grand Street. I think it was Fanny, Sandra, you were there, is now working for Grace Lee, who mentioned to all of us there, the three of us there, that the district received a large sum of money to do work on Delancey Street. And I didn't really get much more information other than that, but supposedly the money is going to the DOT. I don't know where it's coming from, who's getting it,
I know.
and what it's for.
Actually, it was in, I forget, the Bowery Boogie or one of those. I can find the link, and if people want it, I can have it sent out. It's basically this is probably started out from before. It was a proposal that I actually remember seeing quite a while ago, and they got it included in the federal infrastructure bill. So it's basically some massive rework of Delancey Street. I'm not sure if it's going to benefit us in any way in terms of our traffic problems. And it's going to, I mean, they're saying it's going to be $21 million for work on that. We don't know where that 21 million is going to be, but they did get this grant. They're saying it's going to be a road diet, which I imagine they think is going to make there'll be less traffic on Delancey. But to me, it strikes me that until congestion pricing comes in, that means it's just going to push the traffic someplace else.
So there's a couple of hands. Do you want to answer a question?
Yeah, sure, if I can.
So Kathryn Freed and Kim Sillen. Oh, wait, they went away. Are your questions
Well,
gone?
actually, I was just going to say what Bill said. And that
Okay.
the real problem is that might be a problem for us because that's a very contentious area, as you know, because of the proposals that DOT is making where they want to allow people to enter from Norfolk. But yeah, it looks like what they're talking about is bicycle safety and pedestrian safety. So I had suggested, I guess, to Grace that they make sure that there's some input from the community and that it somehow mesh with the proposals that DOT is making, because otherwise you're going to have the two agencies or however many agencies working against each other. That was all.
Thank you.
Kim, was it Kim? Mary Jo? Someone?
Yeah,
Mary
Yeah,
Jo.
Kim has her hand up.
I just wanted to make a comment. Some of you know I work for the DOT and I work very peripherally on that proposal, just on the graphics. So I gotta admit, I didn't read the whole thing, but from the title, it's my understanding that it's pedestrian safety and bicycle safety, but I was under the impression that it was for like safe crossings in front of the bridge. So I don't know how much it's gonna affect, like how much traffic flow is going through there, but I think it will make things better for us as pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah, but we're just Mary Jo posted the link. So if anyone wants more information about it right now, if you look in the chat, so Harriet, you can look, click on it, you get a link to the Gothamist article, which is the first one I read. There might be more, but most of the ones I read sort of just repeated the Gothamist one.
Yeah. Can I speak? I can't raise my hand because I'm co-host. But
Sure.
It was also brought up at the 7 precinct meeting, and I came in at the tail end of it. But I did hear Lee Berman make the request that DOT have some oversight. Because, you know, he mentioned that DOT's been giving a lot of money and a lot of power in making these decisions and not enough community input. So I did hear him make that statement to the powers that be at the meeting. So hopefully they'll consider giving the community more input on how this money is spent and not just leaving it up totally to DOT. Thank you.
Bill, anything else?
No, well, I'm going to try to schedule maybe a Zoom or possibly in-person meeting of the traffic working group in a few weeks. But I haven't worked out a date yet, so I'm looking at that.
Okay.
So people are here. So that's it.
Thank you. So I'm gonna ask for everybody's patience tonight on a couple of levels. One is, I don't know, I have general times when people are going to be here, and Josh Goodman's already here, so I thank you for your patience, Josh. But we are going to try to accommodate our senator and assemblywoman and work around their schedules. We are also going to, since it's an OBA vote tonight, we're going to have presentations by both our current district leaders, because to my knowledge, as of this date, there are no challenges to those two district leaders, to Lee Berman and to Carolyn Laskow. We're also going to listen to a couple of report outs. Sandra Strother's going to report out to us on where we are with electioneering and petitioning. Kathryn Freed's going to report out judicial issues to us. We're going to talk about some upcoming events, and yeah, and that's it. So, and then we'll vote, and then we'll let you know the results of the vote. Although, like I said, it's nothing contentious we're voting on tonight. The only thing we don't have tonight is all the list of county committee members to vote on, because those have just changed and I'm still figuring it out. So we'll probably, I think we'll do another OPA vote, or we'll just ask for a vote on the whole slate. Okay, so Josh, nice to see you. Josh is our male state committee member. Good thing he's not ex, because he wouldn't be allowed to be here.
Thanks, Marion. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you all. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Erev Valentine's Day. I just have a few updates to share from the state committee side. So all of you know that since the New York State Democratic Party basically dropped the ball so much that it lost us control of the House of Representatives, there's been a lot of conversation among progressive members. I'm sorry, let me silence my phone. Amongst progressive members of the state committee about what we're going to do next. We've had a lot of different meetings about whether the right move is to replace Jay Jacobs, the state party chair, which is what I believe, whether there are opportunities to reform within the party. There are some groups like the New York Public Interest Network, NIPAN, that have been talking about creating sort of shadow party organizations. We've had a few meetings of the downtown state committee members, and also some of our close allies who are from the Upper East and Upper West Side. A few folks from Tompkins County and the Ithaca area, and some folks from Albany. You know, our general feeling is that Jay Jacobs has got to go, and we're trying to figure out how to make that happen. At the moment, as you can imagine, he's got a lot of institutional support. You know, some of you may get the state party's newsletter, which just went out for the month, and every single thing about it in it is about the governor. The governor's keeping our taxes low. The governor's, doing a lot of great stuff for us. Look, I like the governor. Don't get me wrong, but that's sort of shows you where things are with the state party. So conversations are ongoing. Rachel Levine, our colleague from the 66th district, just recently convened a meeting of all the Manhattan state committee members. It was a very productive discussion, lots of next steps. And sort of the most immediate next step for us down here is, as you may know, Marion mentioned, I'm the male state committee member for 65. The female state committee member for 65 is currently vacant. And I want you all to know that I'm supporting our friend and colleague, Kathryn Freed, to fill that seat. So that'll be done through an appointment process. It's ongoing. I hope by the next time we all talk, it's a done deal. But it's exciting stuff. And then, of course, we'll have work to do to get her reelected next year, although the district lines will change before that. So we'll see what happens. Can keep it short. I know you have a lot of folks coming through tonight, but the main update is there's a lot of anger on our side, and I'm sure there's a lot of anger from the folks here. And just want you to know we're going to continue to try to deliver on those promises to make the party accessible, make sure it represents our values. And I think I have time to take some questions, Marion. Is that okay? If anybody has any.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody have questions? Lauda?
What is, in your opinion, the main reason why in New York State the Democrats lost so many seats?
There's a couple of theories floating around about this that I think have validity. One is that it's interesting if you sort of look at a national map of where the vote moved more towards Democrats and where it moved more towards Republicans, you actually see a move towards Republicans in the New York City media market, not just within New York, but in anywhere that gets New York City media, which I think really gives a lot of, so like Northern New Jersey and parts of Connecticut as well, gives a lot of credence to this theory that it was really a media narrative around crime. Look, obviously we see the impact of crime. We know that the city has experienced an increase in crime, but the sort of everyday drumbeat that dominated the airwaves, is something that I think had an outsized impact. And then I do think that the other piece of it was a problem with the organizing model. I think that the state party, as it's set up now, was not taking an active role in turning out our core voters. And then, of course, the third piece of it was the way that Governor Cuomo really hogtied us around redistricting. Right, set up a process that was designed to fail. We ended up with this map drawn by someone appointed by a Republican judge in a county that I've never even heard of out in Western New York. So really it was a confluence of factors. And the hope is that we can get rid of some of the folks who are holding us back, move things forward, and that our activism in the next year can win some of those seats right back.
Josh, you can see the hands, right? Or do you want me to call people?
Oh, yeah, Harriet, you want to go now? I can't see the order they're going up in, so I just didn't know what you wanted to.
Is that me?
Yes.
Hi. So are you aware that in Long Island, Nassau County, there has been a push for quite some time for Republicans to register as Democrats? Do you think that's being taken into consideration? Do you think that the redistricting was compromised because of that fact? Because, I mean, that was like a real current that was going through Nassau County.
I mean, I've heard about that. I think that it's important to remember that certainly here in the city, we have plenty of people who are Democrats who wouldn't be Democrats anywhere else in the country anyway. I mean, there's just, as Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez said, in any other country in the world, Eric Adams and I wouldn't be in the same political party, right? It's just sort of the fact of life that in New York City, everybody is a Democrat. And so I think that, it's why it's so important for us to endorse candidates in primaries, make sure that we're doing the work. All the Republicans in Nassau can register with the party if they want. If we're turning our people out for our candidates, we'll just have to win the election in June at the primary instead of in November.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for Josh?
Well, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. If anybody needs anything, of course, I'm always around. It's great to see.
Thank you so much for coming and giving us the report. And actually, it seems like a great time to hear from Kathryn Freed regarding, even though it's not a regular elected state committee female this time, we are planning to endorse for it. And we support, as Josh does, Kathryn Freed. So Kathryn, why don't you give us your talk? We'll
Okay.
Keep it together.
Sure. I'll also try and keep it short. In fact, Josh kind of covered one of the areas that I was interested in running originally. As you may know, Jenny Lowe, who had won, is resigned because she took a job with the Hochul administration. So the usual process is it's really an appointment. I mean, I think the district leaders from the 65th Assembly District will get together and vote. Both Grace Lee and Chris Marte are already supporting me. And usually it's whoever the Assembly District wants, but I would hope people would support me. And hopefully you all know me. One of the reasons I am interested in running is what Josh said, that the Democratic Party in the state really needs to be shaken up a little bit. I think we should get rid of Jay Jacobs. I had said that whoever wanted to run, because I didn't necessarily want to, I told Grace that she had another candidate that was okay, and I would support them as long as they said that they were going to be part of the Progressive Caucus, because I think it's really necessary that we do shake up the Democrats in the state. They're too interested in supporting their own power base. They're not as transparent as they should be. They're not as forthcoming as they should be. They don't seem to be taking a lot of the interests of the citizens of New York State in mind. And the last redistricting was indeed a debacle, and we really do need to get rid of Jay Jacobs. In the meantime, I have been busy locally. One thing, just today, I sent in my submission testimony about consolidating the 65th Assembly District in Lower Manhattan and not being split between, the 61st was created and it was an Assembly District that was split between Staten Island, and part of Lower Manhattan was put in with Staten Island, which was bad for both sides. And other than that, I've been busily working on things like the park. I've volunteered legal consultation on 250 Water Street. And we actually just had a great victory where the judge has said that the Landmarks Preservation Commission has to operate as its own agency and has to make decisions based on the historic district or the individual landmark, rather than being too overly influenced by the mayor's office or acting like a mayoral agency, since it wasn't set up for that reason. Been working on some of the things on the park, especially about finding out what's going on with the air pollution, because if you've been tracking it, the air pollution rates have been going up. And Marion, you'll find this interesting since you did the opening about the Lenape Indians. One of the things that I've been working with Tommy to try and get a report on is what have they found in the archaeological dig out there. They've said they've found some things. They're just not sure if they're significant. And we're thinking about maybe trying to call a press conference, and we've reached out to a number of people about that. And we're trying to see where they are with that so that we can make sure that whatever they find, if it is archaeologically significant, it's protected.
That's great.
And also I think Harriet, Melissa, you had asked about crime in the area. And one of the other things that I've been working on that a bunch of us are trying to do, and I've talked to both Grace and Chris about this, is given the number of shootings that we've had in this neighborhood, especially last week on Thursday, there was a shooting around Madison and Rutgers, and then that moved to Grand Street, and Grand Street was shut down for a number of blocks. So I've been talking to the 7th Precinct to talk about what we can do to get more police presence in the manner of more like street patrols. And they're saying they need more person power, and they need more money. So what we're thinking about doing is trying to do a press conference to call attention to what's the growing crime rate here and try and stop it before it gets worse. So that's about it. Does anyone have questions? Do you want to ask, or should I?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
You mentioned air pollution, and I think you were attributing it to the work in the park and how the pollution's going up. Can you get more information?
Sure. A lot of it is just the fact that there are no longer trees out there. We get a lot more.
No, I'm talking about the data. What's the data behind your statement?
Well, actually, if you can actually track it on your phone, but there are a number of people downtown and particularly in East River, which is next to the park, who have monitors that they have outside, and they've been showing that the pollution rate has been going up. And we've been trying to get now for over a year, I guess, almost a year, no, over a year. We've been trying to get real-time data from the contractors in East River to find out the question about if there is or isn't toxins in there as well, because if you look at the original EIS, it laid out a number of heavy metals and toxins that were in the park, and we haven't really been able to get a readout on that. So we're also trying to work with Chris Marte's office on that.
So I'm one of the people that put up, Wendy's on the call too on this
Right.
meeting. We're part of the group that put up the monitors. And
Right.
as far as I can tell, Wendy may have a different point. When our numbers go up, it's regional. It's not localized to Tommy's or mine, or it's we can't attribute it yet to the
Right.
project. And unfortunately, I mean, it's also, we don't track heavy metals.
Right.
So if you want to talk about that another time, I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Sure. But, we've been trying to, between Wendy, particularly in the CAG, and I'm on the community board in the Parks Committee, and we've been trying to ask for data that they essentially said foil it. And we haven't really gotten responses to that.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Well, definitely more to come on that. Kathryn, I just had a quick question. Would you like me to invite some people from the Lenape Center to come be part of that press conference?
I think Tommy talked to Emily about it, and she was trying to get in contact with some people, but yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about it offline.
Sure.
Okay.
Excuse me, Marion.
Yes.
Just entered. Grace just entered.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
if
saw
you
that.
give her a chance to speak.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So thanks, Kathryn. We're going to ask you for your judicial report after, but it seemed like a good time to have your talk for female state committee. And I'm going to encourage everybody to endorse you. Of course, people will do what they want to. So now our new Assemblywoman is online, and I'm very excited to have her come talk to us and tell us what's going on. And as you know, this club has been very supportive of Grace Lee, and we're very excited to hear from her. But Grace, I don't see you.
Oh, if
Oh,
I
there you
talk,
are.
can you see me now? Okay.
Now
Hi,
I can see
everyone.
you. Yeah, you have to talk.
Oh my gosh, I spend way too much time in Albany right now. I really miss all of you. So we'll have to go get some pizza sometime down in the Lower East Side together. So I just stepped out. We are in it's budget season up in Albany, and I am in the middle of very long, multi-hour conferences, which is where all the assembly comes together, and each chair of every committee comes and talks about the items within the budget that fall under their jurisdiction of their committee. And then in the meantime, we've also been having very lengthy hearings where the governor's office comes and presents, and all the agencies come and present on the budget. And we have the opportunity to ask questions. So I had my first hearing today. I'm on a number of committees now. So I'm on housing, environmental conservation, social services, consumer affairs and protection, and banks. So those are my 5 committees. And then I'm also the co-chair of the Asian Pacific American Task Force, which is the task force of API legislators and anyone who has, high concentrations of Asian Americans in their district or just care about issues around Asian Americans. So doing a lot of different things right now. It's been kind of a whirlwind. I feel like I've been here for 6 months and it's only been 6 weeks. So there's a lot been going on because we're managing 2 offices right now. So, but I'll start with our district office first, because that's been, going really well. As I'm sure most of you know, our staff there, because they're members of the community. We have Kenyelle Hernandez and Fanny Ip, who are kind of leading our community liaison team, and we hiring another person soon to cover communications for us. And then we have a bunch of our interns from the campaign have decided to re-up with us. They loved us so much that they're coming back and now working in our district office. So that's been really exciting, including Emma. So, Emma's on. Okay, which is great. So just a little plug for anyone who knows young people who want to get involved in government. We would love to have them in our office. We've got lots to do there. And so we've been, kind of my first priority in the constituents in the limited time that I have down, apart from going to Lunar New Year parades and events, this last month is trying to book as many meetings with NYCHA as possible. So we're doing now management walkthroughs, management and TA walkthroughs, and just kind of getting those set up, which has been great. Those seem to be, it's hard to get them on the calendar. It's hard to get everyone's schedule together, but that's kind of like been a big priority for us. And then in the meantime, we've been dealing with cases. People have just been walking in. We had some legacy cases from my predecessor that kind of carried on over, and, really happy to say that we've been able to close some of those cases that had been ongoing, before we had gotten there. So that's all been going well. On the legislative side, I will just talk about a couple of quick bills that I've co-sponsored, but signed on to good cause eviction, the housing voucher access, clean slate, build public renewables, fix the MTA, and some other legislation. I also am co-sponsoring legislation to make Lunar New Year a state holiday. And I'm working on a few others, including getting Asian American history integrated into school curriculum across New York State, which would be a big thing, a big achievement, but hard to do as I'm learning. Other than that, we're also spearheading a few budget letters. So now that the governor has presented her executive budget, it's up to the Assembly and Senate now to present their own budgets, kind of as a counter to what the governor has proposed. And as part of that, there are a lot of things that get funded by New York State that are not included in the governor's budget. And so now it's up to the Assembly to make sure, hey, remember this organization that usually gets a few $100,000. We want to make sure that line item gets added back in. And Melissa's nodding her head because I know she's done some lobbying up in Albany for this very reason. So, a few that I'm spearheading as a co-chair of the APA task force, we presented a budget equity letter to call for more funding, increased funding for AEPI community-based organizations. I'm supporting a letter to get funding for Brooklyn Bridge Park, which I don't know if many of you know, but Rosa Chang, who's a financial district resident, has been trying to reinvigorate that area underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, in around the Brooklyn Bridge. And if you have not done her tour, I highly recommend it. Everyone should do it. She's got incredible vision there. So we're trying to support that to get some more green spaces down in Lower Manhattan. Naomi Pena and Emily Hellstrom, both 8065 moms, have started an organization called the Literacy Academy Collective, and they have been working to build structured literacy curriculum into New York City schools, public schools. Right now, if you are a dyslexic learner, you have two options: languish and fail in New York City public schools, or move to a private school and sue the DOE every year to get the services that you need and deserve to be able to learn how to read. And so Naomi and Emily and a few other moms who have children who are dyslexic learners have been fighting to get structured literacy, a way of reading for all kids, not just for those with learning disabilities, a new way for them to read. And they are going to be doing a summer pilot in District 1, which is really exciting because they've identified that District 1 is one of the school districts with a lot of kids who are challenged right now with reading. So I am sponsoring a letter to help raise money for that program, and the one that they're doing in Harlem as well. So I've partnered up with the Assemblymember in Harlem, Amanda Septimo, to work on that. And then also I'm working with a few of my colleagues who who represent a lot of NYCHA developments. And we are working to, get some more funding for NYCHA. Same battle, same story every year. But this in particular right now, NYCHA residents and subsidized housing residents, Section 8 as well, were deprioritized when it came to emergency rental assistance program money. And so they were not able to participate with ERAP. There are over 73,000 applications from subsidized housing and public housing residents that have not been fulfilled through ERAP because they deprioritize them. And so I'm also working with Brian Kavanagh on the Senate side. We're doing letters for both houses, asking for money to fully fund ERAP so that we can get public housing and subsidized housing residents rental assistance that they badly deserve and need. So that's also an uphill battle, but I think we're going to make a lot of noise around it and see what we can do there. So I would say where budget letters are due on the 16th, but I'll also have an opportunity with I'll get a little bit of money, not as much as Chris gets, but a little bit of money for capital and other operating money for the district after the budget has been set, and we'll be able to fund projects that everyone is passionate about. So please keep sending them my way. Even with Literacy Academy Collective, it was just like Emily and I were talking about 250 Water Street, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And it just came out of that. And one other piece of legislation. Thank you, Kathryn Freed, for giving me this idea. We were just talking about the same amount of AstroTurf that's going to be laid down in East River Park. And so Kathryn said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could do something to try and stop AstroTurf from being laid all over the park? And so I am going to be carrying a bill that was formerly carried by Steve Simberwitz, the former chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee, but it will be to put a moratorium on AstroTurf until a study can be done, because it's so bad for the environment. It's so bad for people's health. It off gases like crazy. And yes, Sarah, exactly. Microplastics in the river, which we're already seeing at East River Park. So doing some a study there. But so again, all these conversations like here and there, we're taking all of them and trying to turn them into actionable items in government. So
that's
not
great.
all over the park. Sorry, I was exaggerating, William. But there's
Mary
enough. There's enough. It would be nice to see some more green lawns and fields. And I say that as a former field hockey player. I love playing on AstroTurf. It was fun. The ball goes faster, but would love my kids to have more green fields to play on.
I think Mary Jo Burke has a question.
I would like to speak to somebody in your office about air quality. So can you tell me who I should email?
Samantha. Samantha can drop our contact information. For
okay, so is it SDay so directly to her?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, and I talked a lot about wanting to, Samantha's just cueing me on one more thing, wanting to have an office that connected better to the community. Right now, we are on Fulton Street on the second floor. And so we just got approval for a storefront office on Grand Street, Grand and Allen. So it's going to take a little while because it's being built up, but we're really excited about the new location. And we had to pitch really hard to the speaker and his team to make it happen. But I think they recognize the value of a well-positioned district office. So yes, we will have a big office opening in several months from now. They're saying April or May. So so we'll see. And then one other thing, I am having my inauguration. We haven't sent out the email yet, but it will be on Sunday, March 5th at Seward Park High School. Pretty convenient for all of you, which is great. Starring the Seward Park cheerleading team, which we're really excited about. They just agreed to perform, so we're really excited about that. And we'll send you will get more details. We will send you all that, and we'll send Melissa the information so she can include it in the next newsletter.
Great. What time?
2:00.
Okay. So we were going to have our petitioning kickoff at 1:00 on that same day. Maybe we'll I'll talk to you offline and we'll
Oh, you
figure
can
out.
just do it outside of the school. Get everyone as they
Yeah.
come in.
That's true. That's a good idea. Okay. So Mary Jo,
Just bring
your
the clipboards
hand is
there.
still up. Is it a new question? Harriet.
Oh, me? Thank you. Hi, Grace. How are you?
Hi,
Good to
Harriet.
see you. Can you, a couple of questions. A, can you shed some more light on that grant that's coming our way for Delancey Street and what your involvement is or might be with respect to that? Also, funding for NORC. Are you pursuing that? And last but not least, you're looking for young interns. Any appetite for old interns?
Yes, we welcome everyone. Would love to have you in the office
Okay.
or anyone else. Yes. Okay, so the first thing on, oh my gosh, sorry, I'm so brain dead. It's been a long day.
The money for Delancey Street.
Okay, money for Delancey Street. So as part of a Safe Streets for All, it's part of the infrastructure bill that was passed in DC. There is a program, we are getting $18.5 million for Delancey Street. That is mainly being run. So I think the former New York City head of DOT commissioner is now working in DC. And so this was actually driven and inspired by her work in the city, and she brought the money back down to the Lower East Side. So that's kind of how that happened. I have unfortunately not a lot of details. I was invited to that press conference, but one thing I am looking to do is to follow up with Senator Gillibrand's office and also with Congressman Goldman's office, because we need to make sure that there's real public participation in how the plan gets executed. So, I also had a conversation with Kathryn about that, and I know all of you have been super involved in the transportation issues between Grand and Delancey. So, I will get more information about that. I'll add that to my to-do list to kind of see kind of the staging of that work, when they're going to begin it, like where in the planning process that we'll have some opportunities to comment, because I think that will be really important. Oh,
Great.
and then for the
Laura.
NORCs, that's a great flag, Harriet. And I'm going to look into that actually, and maybe I should reach out to some of the local NORCs to see who they're working with to get funding. So I appreciate the flag there.
Yeah, big flag
Mm-hmm.
for the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really important.
And I
Thanks.
think,
Then Bill.
and just so you know, I think some of those organizations are also, get settlement house funding, and I am supporting a budget letter to get more funding for settlement houses, but I know that NORCs can also get separate funding. So we'll look into that and let you know, Harriet.
Laura?
Yeah, it's a question about NYCHA. So like there's NYCHA, people pay rent, and then, that contributes to maintain the buildings. And then for the deficit, there's funding coming from the state and the city. What's the responsibility of the state, and what's the response? I mean, who's paying the employees? Like between the city and the state, how does it work?
It's actually a great question. I was literally just having a conversation with the speaker about this, because I was like telling him, like, so I've got this letter coming. And he said, I mean, they do have some hesitation at the state level in funding, helping, fund arrears and operating costs, operating expenses for NYCHA, because it really is a city responsibility and it's funded from the federal government. So, and that's so if we're giving money, we're basically, they already get money from the federal government to operate NYCHA. So if the state, and then we give them more money, it's kind of diverting funds when really it should be coming from the federal government. So yeah, there is that. Regardless, I think that this letter is still really important to highlight the need in NYCHA, and also maybe to spur some conversation about how we do actually get ERAP funded properly. So, and that's why we're working with Senator Kavanagh and his, at the Senate level, he's housing chair at the state Senate, kind of coordinating to kind of like, how do we bring more? And I'm sure you've seen the New York Times recently wrote an article about the amount of rent arrears.
Yeah.
So I think they're over $400 million right now in rent arrears. In my district alone, my district has 14.5 million. So in 65, 14.5 million of rent arrears, and there's 9 million of that happened during the pandemic. So since March of 2020. So it's our families are really struggling, and it's Brian Honan, who's the does intergovernmental relations for NYCHA, was saying, he's like, we have families who make $20,000-$30,000 a year, and they're $6,000 behind in rent. Like, it's becoming impossible for them to pull themselves out of that. So that's why we're just trying to, get some attention put on this, because there's no reason why they should have been put to the back of the line.
Yeah.
Bill, more questions?
Yes, I just want to put a bug in the ear. I'm going to put this in all our elected representatives, and people have heard me say this before. There are no subway stations at all close to us that have elevator accessibility. The closest one is 14th Street and First Avenue, or else it's Broadway Lafayette, or it's the one on Canal Street, or I guess it's the 6th, but only goes one way. And Essex Delancey is something like the 27th busiest subway stop in Manhattan, but there's 46 subway stops that have elevators. So why not us? So I know it's complicated, but I know that basically all levels of our government fund the MTA. So I'm going to ask you, and I'll ask Senator Kavanagh, I'm going to ask Representative Goldman when he shows up, is to deal with leaning on the MTA to actually do it. They were supposed to do something with Essex Crossing, and it sort of didn't happen. But that was before my time here. But it's a problem. It's going to be, because there's a lot of people all in the neighborhood who really are not able to take the subway stairs. Thank you.
We'll make sure to bring it up if we have the chance with the agencies, and have a couple friends in corporations and the corporations committee. So we'll talk to them about it too. But I feel that pain as a mom with young kids in a stroller. So I've had to carry my kids up and down in a stroller a number of times on the subway. So yeah.
I can't.
Hi, Sandra.
Can I say something? I can't raise my hand. I'm sorry. I just want to Grace. Thank you. Thank you very much. You hit the ground running. You haven't even been inaugurated yet. You've just done some really great things. And I'm speaking also especially about getting that money for rental arrears, because a lot of the residents here at Grand Street Guild did not qualify. And that was a really big bone of contention. So I really appreciate everything that you do. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
I would also like to second that. Grace, you really hit the ground running. And I am just so pleased to have you representing us and working with us and coming and telling us all this great work you're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's fun. I'm having a good time. So that's good. But I have to thank my amazing staff as well. I cannot run 2 offices well without incredible people. And so, Samantha is at the center of that. And then also my incredible, constituent staff, everyone really has a heart for the community and wanting to help. So I think we're all coming from a place of trying to just make this community better.
Thank you. We look forward to many more years of working with you.
Thank you. Okay, see you soon. Maybe
Okay,
pizza and beer at Salugi's.
sounds good.
Okay, see you.
So is Senator Kavanagh in the room? I can't see everybody anymore. No. Okay, so let's move forward with the agenda. He's not, right?
No.
Okay, so I already think I told you in the beginning that Representative Goldman could not be here today. He had a conflict. We're going to invite him back on March 13th. And at 8 o'clock, although again, timing's funny, we're going to have the civil court countywide judge that has come through panel represent to us, and then she will also be on the open vote for you to vote for. And who else are we voting for? Carolyn, would you like to make your pitch? Carolyn is running for district leader, female district leader, and has been our district leader for the last few years.
Yeah,
Carolyn,
thanks,
how many
Marion.
years? For 4 years?
Well,
Six?
let's see. Lee and I were first elected in September of 2017. So we're coming up on 5.5 years now, and they've changed it so that the primary day is in June. So yeah, almost 6 years, 3 terms. And hi, everybody. Hi, Grant Street Democrats. Thank you all for being here tonight. If we haven't met in person yet, I am Carolyn Laskow. I'm one of your district leaders, and I hope to meet you all in person, perhaps on March 5th for petitioning kickoff / Grace Lee's inauguration on the Lower East Side. And I am seeking your endorsement to run for district leader again to represent Part A of the 65th Assembly District. Some of the things that I want to work on, that I want to continue working on in the neighborhood, is to, have more communication. I feel like we have really good lines of communication with our various electeds, and hopefully to have even more action resulting from the engagement that we have with our state representatives and our congressional representatives and, Manhattan Borough president and everything. There are a lot of issues that, we haven't solved everything in the 5.5 years since Grand Street Dems became official. There's still, of course, traffic in the neighborhood. And, we want more money to our public schools, and we want more affordable housing, deeply affordable housing. But it's really been an honor to work with everyone here and to, meet so many of our neighbors and to join forces and, press our officials to bring our concerns to Albany and to DC and to City Hall and to make incremental change. I feel like we're moving in the right direction down here. So I would love your endorsement to run for district leader again. And I can put my email in the chat too, in case anyone doesn't have it. And if you have questions, let me know.
Does anyone have any questions now? Carolyn?
I don't think, I don't see any hands.
Yeah, I'm going to ask something, which is, so I've been asking this of a lot of people lately, and I'm just curious what you think are going to be the central issues around which people need to organize over the coming 2 years. And how you will, as district leader.
Well, so Josh touched on one issue, which is the New York State Democratic Party. And there's an organization, or, not official, but there is a movement to replace Jay Jacobs, and, which I'm involved in. And there's a lot of, it's that thing that I think Barack Obama said, this is like turning a cruise ship, and he is very embedded in the Democratic Party, but I don't think it's impossible. I think that is one, local and state issue that's really important, really trying to reform the Democratic Party in New York State. And that's something we can all be involved in. And then, you know, we're going to have another presidential election coming up in a year and a half, which is kind of hard to fathom. And this past election cycle, a bunch of us, I know, were very involved in state elections in not just in New York, but in neighboring communities in Pennsylvania, among other places, working with their local Democratic committees to turn state positions Democrat, or to hold houses into, you know, Pennsylvania's the big one, and they recently had a special election, and the Pennsylvania House remains Democratic, thank God. But I think it's, you know, working on the ground. We really do need to work in New York State, you know, like I think we felt really great going to Virginia and Pennsylvania and Ohio, but we have to do a lot of work in New York State, both to try to win back congressional seats and also to just raise voter engagement. I mean, the sort of existential issues like the climate crisis, nothing happens if we don't have representation. And so it's like, you know, nothing happens with trying to have some pretty significant climate reform. Nothing happens with getting universal health care. Nothing happens with deeply affordable housing or fully funded public schools. That doesn't happen if we don't have people from district leader on up who are very committed to these issues. And so it's a little bit chicken and egg, but like, because all these issues are so important, but we have to get turnout at these elections. Turnout is so poor in New York State and in New York City and in our district. And so, you know, whatever avenue you're coming at it from, if you're coming at it as a bike advocate or an environmental advocate or, you know, an education advocate or a human rights advocate, and you want to make sure that queer and trans people are allowed to live, like we need to get people registered and get people voting.
Great, Harriet. Thank you, Carolyn, for that.
Thank you, Carolyn, for doing such a great job servicing our district. I know this sounds like a strange question or comment, and I know we're a progressive club, but I've actually, you know, I talked to a lot of people in the neighborhood who have told me that they have either joined or were thinking of joining and actually did not feel welcome because they did not feel that they were maybe as progressive as some of, you know, our positions. So how do you feel about being more inclusive of, you know, maybe not people that are not as progressive as, you know, I know we have like an agenda, we have a constitution or whatever it was, our bylaws, but you know, it'd be nice to get more people engaged who are concerned about things that, you know, on a more moderate level, or maybe just more moderate, you know, item on their agenda.
That's a tricky issue. And I think that because Grand Street Dems, from its, you know, from its earliest days, from its, you know, infancy, was so concerned with progressive issues because that was a huge void in our neighborhood. We didn't have a club that represented progressive Democrats. And so, you know, no one's following anyone into a voting booth. I have no idea how anyone actually votes, you know, in these endorsement meetings or in primaries or on election day. I don't think, you know, and certainly even within the club, we disagree all the time. And so I think for folks who are on the fence, it's really useful to know that you can drop into any of our meetings, you know, come to a meeting and like see what we are really on the ground about. Because I know when we were first getting out into the neighborhood 5.5 years ago and like meeting people, and I think using the term progressive was like met with some hostility. But as Danica Rome said in her first successful run in Virginia, everyone agrees on traffic, right? That was how she ran and won and became like the first trans woman elected to a Virginia state position, is because ultimately, I think the things that make our neighborhood, the things that we are concerned about in our neighborhood, I think are truly unifying issues. And for folks who feel concerned that we are too progressive, I would just ask more questions. What does that mean? Like, what are the concerns that you have? Are you concerned that we're going to, I just don't know. I would like to know specifics. I think the term progressive can get misconstrued and people are afraid of,
But basically it's how we are projecting ourselves to other people. And just like you said, everybody cares about the traffic. Okay, whether you're progressive or moderate. But, if there's a sense that, hey, we're progressive, and if you don't think progressive or that's not your, I just feel like, what do you think about how we project ourselves? And is there some way to maybe broaden the horizon?
Again, without a specific, it's very hard for me to say that like, oh, we won't do this or that, because I would never, being progressive is so important to me personally. And progressives, sort of one of the tenets is like, you cast a wide net, you bring people in, you expand opportunities, you make a bigger table. And so if someone has a very specific issue they don't agree about, like, I think we have so much room for discussion around it. But if it's just a sort of general, like, I don't feel comfortable with progressives, I don't know where to start a conversation there. I think we have to be able to talk about things really specifically. I don't want bike lanes. I hear that a lot from people in the club. That's an issue that I think is very divisive in our club. And I think we have very productive discussions around it. There are people who think we should eliminate all car ownership below Houston. And there are people who think we should eliminate all bikes below Houston, people on this Zoom, and those are very closely held beliefs that people have. But again, when we're bringing our honest selves, to the discussion, then we can start, we can talk about it, we can hear people. But if it's so if you have a specific thing that you've heard that someone has brought to you, then like, let's talk about it. But if it's sort of just, I don't like progressives, that's a harder place to meet someone at.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I definitely tried to convince them that they can have all different types of views. So
Harriet, why don't you reach out and have us put it on the agenda for a future meeting? It's an interesting conversation to have.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move us along. Carolyn, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
I see that Senator Kavanagh is on the call, and I see that Dana Catanzaro is on the call. So since Senator Kavanagh was scheduled first, I'm going to invite him in. And again, please accept my apologies for the flexibility tonight, because we're just trying to accommodate everyone.
Okay, thank you. So do you want me to just give a few remarks and then jump in?
Tell us what's going on.
Okay,
And
I don't know.
Sure,
I don't know the
have
timing.
questions.
I don't know if my timing is bad for others, but I appreciate your flexibility, because I just got off a what we call a work group, which is the way the Senate Democratic majority processes the budget. We just went through the public protection budget. So we're I guess 6 weeks in. We've got the governor's budget before us. Budget is due March 31st. It's going to be a quick process this year. As many of you know, I chair the Senate Housing, Construction, and Community Development Committee. So I've been particularly focused on those aspects of the budget. The governor has proposed a very broad, ambitious set of changes to all kinds of laws that are intended to strengthen our ability to produce much more housing. That includes in New York City as well as in the suburbs. It's probably too complicated to summarize, but broadly speaking, a whole series of provisions that are intended to make it such that localities cannot block housing. And if they do, then is basically if localities are not producing enough housing, there are provisions where the state could step in and approve housing that is proposed there that's being rejected by the locality. There are also proposals to require certain amounts of density around transit stations. There are proposals specific to New York City to promote conversions of commercial space like office buildings to residential. Lots of other stuff too. I would say a few big things that have been my priorities and priorities of a lot of my colleagues in the legislature for a long time are not in the governor's proposal, including something called the Housing Access Voucher Program, which I wrote in the latter part of 2019 and thought would be a priority in 2020 until COVID happened. But basically, it's to create a large-scale rental assistance program for people who would be who are homeless or otherwise facing imminent loss of their housing. We've had since 2019, also been working on something called good cause eviction, which stands for the radical proposition that people can't be evicted from their homes for no reason by their landlords, and a number of other provisions that I think are important for us to work in if we're going to try to do a comprehensive housing package. And locally, I would say public housing. There's no new funding for public housing at all in the governor's budget, and that's something we've had to fight for each year. So we had $400 million for public housing capital last year, and again, she's starting the conversation with zero this year. There's also a program called the Homeowner Protection Program, which protects people who are facing loss of their homeownership rights through foreclosure. And again, that's been funded every year at 20 million. Last year, we got it up to 35 million because of COVID. And many people, with mortgage arrears and tax arrears, that has also been zeroed out in the governor's proposal. But I would say all of that is, unfortunately, the basic routine of these budget negotiations. But the good news is that the Senate and the Assembly, I think, have a good opportunity to work with the governor on her proposals, which are complex and are probably going to need some modification, and also to push forward with our priorities. And I'm committed. Some of you have heard me say this before, but I really think we got to get back to thinking of New York State as a place where no one lacks housing because of inability to pay, that we really treat housing as a right. We used to talk about ending homelessness, and we don't really anymore. But I think we really have to move in that direction, and I'm committed to that. Lots of other things going on. Climate, implementation of the climate proposals is a very big thing. The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which we passed in 2019, is the most ambitious legislative standards really of any state in the country and of most jurisdictions in the world. But they need to be implemented. I've been trying to do the statewide All Electric Building Act for a couple of years now. The governor actually has put a version of that in her budget, which is not quite as good as my version, but is good. But we need to make sure that we are incentivizing the very aggressive changes we need in the way we produce electricity, the way we transmit it, and the way we use it, including major changes in buildings, housing, and other buildings, which I'm particularly focused on because that falls under the jurisdiction of the Housing Committee. All kinds of other proposals, funding education. I think we're doing pretty well. Funding higher ed, we're having a tougher fight. Governor's proposing tuition increases. It's hard to summarize this. There's a million things going on, but I think I won't try. But I assume you have questions on particular issues you're interested in, so maybe we'll hear about those. I just would note we also spent a lot of this session so far dealing with the nomination of Hector LaSalle to the Court of Appeals, to the Chief Judge. I did hear from some of you about that, and I thought it was important that we allow our Judiciary Committee to do its process and have a hearing and ask questions on the record in public. And I came out basically after that meeting, along with Liz Kruger, saying, I can't support the nominee. The Republican members of the Senate have now sued us to try to force that to a vote on the floor. I think that is, I think it's an interesting legal question whether they can succeed and what the judges will say. I do think that at this point, there are not 32 votes in the Senate to confirm Judge LaSalle. I think I'll stop there unless does that seem like a good start?
Thank you, Senator. That's a great start. And there's a bunch of hands. So why don't we let everyone ask what they want to know? Carolyn first.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Senator Kavanagh. Can you, you were talking about affordable housing. Can you update us on 5 World Trade? Has there been any movement there?
I would say that we've had extensive conversations with the community group that, that has been formed around that, and lots of conversations with all of our elected officials, including, we have a few new elected officials in Manhattan, particularly, Dan Goldman, because it's in his new congressional district. I think that, I think it's unlikely we get to 100%, but we are trying to push the numbers up. It's going to require an agreement with the executive to find the funding. I don't have anything more specific I can say. I can say I am very focused in doing what I can to maximize the affordability of that. And it is among many things that are going to require a negotiation between concerned communities and concerned legislators and the governor. I will say, I mentioned the Laskow thing. I don't think it's the source of a long-term confrontation between the governor and the Senate, but it was a confrontation that lasted from December 22nd until the 3rd week of January. And I think it might have crowded out other negotiations, but I think the budget is a good time when we're going to be negotiating a lot of provisions about housing. I am trying to insert that into the conversation with the executive, and also meeting with ESD and the state agencies to figure out what we can do.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Sarah Richardson.
Okay, thanks, Senator Kavanagh, for joining us at the end of a very long day. Last year, you mentioned the All Electric Buildings Act, which I know it's landmark legislation. It's really, really good. We know that buildings are a huge source of climate pollution. We're learning more and more about how bad gas stoves are for our collective health in our homes, and it's just excellent legislation to get through. And I was pleased to see that it's reintroduced for the current session. How can we, your constituents, help get this legislation over the finish line and into law? What can we do to help you get this through?
I think, this requires a 3-way agreement among the Assembly and the Senate and the governor. I think that the governor's version is good. There are basic differences there. You give longer time for larger buildings. They're defining larger buildings anything more than 3 stories. I define it as anything more than 7 stories. And they also have a significantly longer time frame. So I think, the extent you're able to communicate to the executive that they should do a robust implementation of this, that's great. The other thing is, I think our local Assembly members are good on this, but I think, it's going to require the Assembly to make this a priority to get it done. And I think that hearing, I think it's always good to hear from your local constituency that they really care about something. So hearing from you that, making sure your local Assembly members are aware that, and I think Samantha is on the call today representing Assemblymember Lee, but just, having that there, Samantha, hi Samantha, just asking them to join in the effort to push it through. The Senate, I think, has been a little further along on this topic than the Assembly. But I think, I think continuing, there are environmental organizations and other coalitions that are pushing this and a few of the other big ticket climate items this year. So I think you can also, engage with them, and they will have advocacy efforts as well. So you can join as well.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Judy.
Yes, we do appreciate you coming here tonight, not only after a busy day of meetings, but walking all through the parade yesterday, all the way to the end.
I love the parade, but yes, it was.
Also very much appreciate the efforts over the years of your work on the Housing Committee to get more financial assistance so that people can stay in their homes and people can qualify for existing apartments. But what sort of ideas do you have for getting us more housing stock in New York City, especially in our district, that is affordable at all levels of affordability, even the lowest ones? Do you endorse anybody's plans like the one that Mark Levine was coming up with to find some vacant lots and things? Or do you have something else in mind where the state and city can work together?
Yeah, I made favorable comments in the press release for Mark Levine's report. I think it's a great effort that, I think it's a great use of his office to try to identify sites that are available. And I think that's important. I do think what the governor is proposing is to think of our housing shortage and the tremendous pressure on communities like ours as not just a local issue. It's not just a community level issue. It's not just a city level issue. It's really the metropolitan area. I mean, she's thinking about it as a whole state issue. But, for a long time, the United States doesn't produce enough housing. We have a housing crisis nationally. But New York City has had a particularly tight housing market in our region. And that is partly because of not enough production in New York City, but New York City actually does better than some of the surrounding counties. And so, for example, nationally, we produce about 34 new housing units for every 1,000 people in the country. And again, a bit of a housing crisis nationally, but some localities are doing okay. In New York, New York City, within the 5 boroughs, that number is about 22. In Long Island, that number is 7. So every 1,000 residents are only producing 7 new housing units. That's not enough so that people, don't have to live with their parents when they get out of college. And it's not enough to make it so that schools can recruit students and professors and businesses can recruit employees. So for a long time, localities have just opposed, it's almost impossible to build residential, multifamily, or affordable in some of our suburbs. What the governor is trying to do is take a regional approach to that and say, basically, everybody has to allow their housing stock to increase. Her proposal is a 3-year project where everybody has to allow it to go up by 3%. And if they don't do that, the state will be able to step in and say to some of these localities, if you don't approve it, we're going to approve it. It's a little more technical than that, but that's the basic gist of it. She's also saying that if you have Long Island Railroad Station, Metro North stations, you have to allow density around in some of the land around those stations. So those things, the theory, and I think there are good reason to think this, might relieve some of the upward pressure on communities like ours if we can get to the point where, everybody's doing their share. In terms of a specific local thing, I support trying to get more affordability at 5 World Trade. There may be other opportunities. I wrote this legislation to help convert hotels to permanent housing. There have been a couple of hotel conversions. That's been tough. The most specific thing that might be relevant locally is the conversion of office space to housing. And currently it is basically impossible to convert a large office building to housing if it was built after about 1969. So the governor's proposal moves that date up to 1990 and provides various flexibility. In particular, it waives I think there's probably a lot of people where I don't have to explain this to, but there was a maximum of 12 FAR density for housing in New York. The governor is proposing to eliminate that state cap throughout New York City, and I think that's going to be controversial. But if you have an office building that exceeds 12 FAR right now, it's much larger than that. You can't convert it to housing because even though you have a 30-story office building, you can't make 30 stories of housing on that site. So she's proposing to basically, for existing commercial real estate, to change that and to allow other changes that will permit housing to be built in commercial office building. I think that is the most specific short-term thing that could create more housing in our community. The governor is proposing to do that without affordability restrictions. She's saying that we would create affordability in those buildings through tax incentives, but if they just want to make the conversion, they could do it market rate. And I think that's one of the conversations we want to have over the next few weeks about whether we should be making sure some of that is affordable at various levels. I would also note that the Housing Access Voucher Program allows the fair market rent to be paid regardless of the ability of the resident to pay. So you could have somebody with very low income, they pay 30% of that income, and then the rest of the rent is paid by the voucher program. And I think that's a significant tool for making sure that people can afford to continue to live in our communities.
Thank you.
Great. I'm going to move us along if that's okay. There's still a lot of questions. And I'm going to ask if the questions and answers could be cut a little short because we still have some agenda items.
I'll try to be
Melissa.
pithy.
Thank you. Be pithy.
Hi, Senator Kavanagh. It's nice to see you. So I have a question about certain funding with the budget. You mentioned like a big bill, like the environmental bill that, you know, was passed, but it hasn't been implemented. And then like a smaller budget item, for instance, there's an adult cystic fibrosis assistance program that Governor Cuomo took away and then it was put back in, but doesn't have the funding for an administration to actually administer the project. So my question is, why did these bills pass? But it's almost like, you know, in name only, because there's not actually a structure to actually, you know, fund the bill or administer the bill or program. So what is the deal with that? Because
this is hard. That's hard to be pithy because but I'll try. Okay, so with the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act did create a structure, including this climate council that has now done its work and made some very bold recommendations. We need to implement those. The governor is proposing a very aggressive funding mechanism that they estimate would generate about $3 billion a year. There's also, you know, good news came out of Washington in the last year and a half. The three major federal pieces of legislation provided a lot of money that's relevant to climate. A lot of that money will flow through the state out to these processes. So I would say we need to follow through this year, but there is a process that's on track. And again, I think we're ahead of most states, both in terms of putting the standards in place and also identifying the funding mechanisms. The smaller things, it is the budget process at the city and the state level mostly works like this. The governor puts out an executive budget, and then legislators fight for individual programs. And then we win some of those fights, and then they get in the executive budget. And then the next year, the governor puts out an executive budget, and they have to decide, do we include those things that the legislature fought for last year, or do we start from zero and make them fight for them again? Most executives at the city and the state level have chosen the latter for many years. And so often things are zeroed out and we have to fight to put them back. It doesn't mean they won't get put back. I think it is an unfortunate way to do budgeting. And I mentioned that homeowner protection program, which has $0, even though it's absolutely essential. So we will continue to fight for the things. I will confess, I don't know the specifics of the cystic fibrosis program you were talking about, but I'll look it up afterwards. I'll have my staff look at it. But you know, this is the way budgeting works between the executive and the Senate, and I think and between the executive and the legislature. And by the way, the city council mayor process is similar, unfortunately.
Thank you. The first part was very pithy.
Sorry.
Laura. And again, please, and nobody else put your hands up. I'm going to go through to Bill Ferns, and then we really do have to move on. So Laura is next.
Yes, it's another question about housing. I've been reading a lot about housing recently because it's such a terrible problem for so many New Yorkers. And it seems to me that the problem is not so much the number of housing that we have, but the fact that like in the lower end of the spectrum, that's where we have a lack of housing, like for those that are affordable for people who make $30,000-$40,000 a year or less. Would it be possible to solve that problem to require that any development that receives subsidies from either the federal government, but I think that's approved by the state or the city, would be affordable to people at that income level? So like it would be like 30, 35%, 40% max of the AMI.
That is basically the way we've done this. And, you know, we did a $5.5 billion capital budget last year, and basically almost all that money goes to programs where there's a specific affordability requirement. We've also had these huge tax incentives, like the 421A program, which was controversial. We weren't buying enough affordability in exchange for those tax breaks. I think that's important. And I think, again, I think I'm more interested in spending money to address the problems than the governor is so far this year. And that's why I'm proposing rental assistance as well. But I do think the idea, part of the reason it is so expensive, market rate housing, is because there's not enough, there's a scarcity, and people, you have to be rich to win the sort of bidding war for some of that housing that's out there. So I do think increasing the housing supply is also an important thing. And again, we're underproducing housing for a very long time now. So I support that as well. And I want to make sure that we do that in a way that incentivizes affordability specifically. That's, given the pithiness requirement, I think that's as far as I can go, but I hope that helps.
Perfect. I love it. William.
Hi, Senator Kavanagh. I'll be quick. Climate and the enforcement, the issue of the All Electric Buildings Act. New York City's doing Local Law 97, and the enforcement's going to be with DOB, Department of Buildings, and more or less fines. Is that I don't know if that's built into the law, but how is the state going to do enforcement, or what is the mechanism that will be enforcement for the
So
states?
Local Law 97 is primarily about existing buildings. The All Electric Building Act.
Nope. Local Law 97 is for buildings over 25,000 square feet, existing and new.
Right, but sorry, the city did all electric building. The All Electric Building Act says you can't permit new buildings that aren't all electric unless they meet a specific exception. So the enforcement of that would be more or less, it's illegal to build things that don't meet those exceptions. The harder question is how you do the transition. And again, I introduced the all electric building in the spring of 2021. I candidly I thought it was the low hanging fruit and we'd be done with it now, and we'd be moving to the next stage of how we incentivize and perhaps mandate conversions. I think now we have to do that in parallel to this. So we're working on that. But I do think it is trickier to do enforcement because you've got numerous jurisdictions and there's no statewide equivalent of the building department. The codes are made by the State Department of State and codes councils and all that. But it's a complicated question how to enforce it. I don't have a good answer for you at this point.
Is the grid going to be enforced? Is that something the legislature can force the utilities to improve so that we can use electric?
I think we have to simultaneously increase transmission, which we're doing. We've got many gigawatts being built offshore right now. We need more offshore wind. But yeah, we need to improve transmission capacity as well. And that's a combination of incentives and regulations and pushing the utilities to do what they got to do. But we got to do all those things simultaneously. I focus more on the buildings because that's the jurisdiction of my committee, but I also work on the energy and environmental committees.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And William, thank you for keeping on with that because that's going to be a big thing in our future. Kathryn and then Bill, and please no more hands after that.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Brian.
Hi.
Two quick things. One, in fact, somebody asked Grace before about NYCHA housing, and I know that's more federal than state, but there are something like 3,300 empty NYCHA apartments that just need repairs. Is there some project, some way we can push that to try and, use those, utilize those, get the repairs done and utilize those, because that's an immediate 3,300 affordable housing or lower.
Trying to keep NYCHA accountable has been a challenge. I also do think the funding levels are pretty lousy. We are starving them for resources as well. And that's primarily a result of federal disinvestment, as you said, but I think the city and the state have a real obligation. And I came to Albany 15 years ago and started pushing. I remember I had a chair of NYCHA, I won't name him, but he came to Albany and he wanted $6 million with an M for NYCHA. And I was like, how about 500 million a year, right? We've never made it to 500 million a year, but like I said, last year we had 400 million, including non-New York City NYCHA public housing as well. But no, I think we need to get money in place and then we need to renovate. You may have seen probably you've all seen in the Times, NYCHA's only got a 65% rent collection rate going on as well at the moment. A lot of that is because the emergency rental assistance program has not worked effectively for public housing. I'm trying to fix that in this year's budget, and I'm trying to get capital. Getting them to actually make repairs on units. I don't have any formal mechanism to that, but I could certainly push them and talk to them about it. And I think it's a good point.
Yeah. And very quickly, because we're mentioning about the
Kathryn, one question. I'm sorry, we're really running short on time.
Well, I just wanted to know about. All right, Brian, I'll call you.
Okay.
There you go. Good. Bill Fern,
William, if you want to call me about commercial buildings and conversions, I'd be happy to hear about that too.
Okay.
So far.
Hi, Bill.
Senator Kavanagh, how are you doing? Good to see you. I'm going to ask you the same thing. So everyone's heard it before. You might not have come in. It's just that I mentioned it to Assemblymember Lee, is that our subway stop at Essex and Delancey is the 27th busiest subway stop in Manhattan, but it has no elevator accessibility. The escalator accessibility is very iffy. It goes up, but it's only at 2 places. There's like 40 some odd subway stops in Manhattan that do have elevator accessibility. So I wonder, why not us? So,
I mean, the short answer is it should. I have advocated for that in the past and pushed the MTA on it, including at public events and otherwise. It is, I think, a little more complicated because of the multiple platform, like, that middle platform where you have to go up and down stairs to get there. I use that station. I live on 2nd and C. I use that station a lot. So I'm familiar with it. I agree. It's unacceptable they haven't figured that out.
I'm just asking that all you electeds who now sort of seem to be in the same place politically, as opposed in the past, at some point start beating up the MTA together.
I will take up that suggestion. Samantha, you hear that? We're gonna
Great. And
we will focus on that soon. Again.
Senator, thank you very, very much for joining us. Apparently we have to have you more often. So the long line of questions will be less. That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you for your work.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Okay, next let's have Judge Dana Catanzaro speak to us about, she just came out of panel for countywide civil court judge. Did I get that right? And she's going to speak to us, and she's on your OPA ballot. We hope to endorse her as a club.
Thank you so much, Marion, and good evening, Grand Street Democrats. I appreciate you taking the time to let me introduce myself, as I'd be honored to have your endorsement as I run for civil court countywide. Just to tell everyone a little bit about myself, I know in the email that went out, there was a link to my law firm website. I am a partner at my law firm where I prepare cases from inception through trial. I have worked throughout my career in civil court, Supreme Court, appellate division, in various types of law. So I've done plaintiff's personal injury defense, criminal defense work, matrimonial work, probate work, and even some transactional work. I just want to tell you a little bit more about myself personally, so you know the type of person I am and why I'm running to become a judge. I am running to be a judge, to become a civil court judge, because I want to spend every day making a difference in the lives of everyday New Yorkers. I was born here in Manhattan. I grew up in Brooklyn and moved back to Manhattan for law school, where I attended New York Law School and had the privilege of working at a law firm while attending school full time. So I was able to get early access to the court systems, filing papers, picking up arrest tickets in between classes. The constant that throughout my career has been my ability to resolve cases. Depending on whichever side of the caption I'm on in the case, I know the value of a case, and I'm good at working with people to come to a resolution, so that the cases that I'm handling don't have to drag on, and people can move on with their lives at the resolution of their case. The other constant in my career has been bar associations. I'm the first lawyer in my family, so I do understand how frightening being in the courthouse for the first time can be for many people, including new lawyers. I joined a committee of the New York City Bar Association, the New York City Bar Chorus, during law school, and I have been a member of that committee for the last 16 years. I formerly chaired the committee, and what it is a chorus of attorneys, judges, law secretaries, file clerks, and we perform at venues across Manhattan, musical outreach, so to speak. So we sing at community centers, AIDS and cancer patient residences, nursing homes, substance abuse rehabilitation centers, when we do about 8 concerts a year. And it's been an amazing experience to meet different people throughout the city and to spread joy through music. I am currently the president of the Colombian Lawyers Association, which is the Italian Bar Association in New York. I'm in my 4th year as president, and I began my term shortly after COVID. Or shortly before COVID. So I was very excited that I was able to, through Zoom and other virtual platforms, grow our membership during COVID and collaborate with other bar associations throughout the city. We have done work with the Metropolitan Black Bar Association, the Haitian American Lawyers Association, the Brehon Law Society, the Puerto Rican Bar, the Dominican Bar Association, and many others. We did virtual continuing legal education seminars for our members and for members of all of the other organizations that sponsored our program so that people could attend continuing legal education seminars for free if they were a member of one of the organizations during COVID. And it's also allowed me to introduce our young members and our law student members to many other types of lawyers so that they could network, because I appreciate the importance of networking. I am also involved with outside of work, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I am the co-chair of the new New York City Advocacy Committee. The American Foundation Suicide Prevention, for anyone who's not aware, raises funds throughout the country for suicide prevention research. I have participated in the advocacy forums for the last several years, in which we reach out to elected officials to seek support for suicide prevention legislation. The advocacy committee that I'm currently co-chairing is now working on local issues related to mental health and suicide prevention, such as mental health in the homeless community, ending solitary confinement, and other issues that people bring to us within. So I'm making this step now to run for civil court so that I can find a middle ground for my legal experience and my passions of helping people and helping everyday New Yorkers, and making the courtroom a safer and better place, and less frightening place for anyone who appears before it. I'm happy to leave my email address in the chat so people could ask any questions they have of me. I'd love to speak with the members of Grand Street Democrats later. Last week, I was endorsed by the county as the county nominee for the countywide seat, so I am running unopposed. And I hope to speak with you more, and I'd be honored to have Grand Street's endorsement as I take this next step. Thank you so much for letting me speak with you.
Thank you very much for coming to see us. There was a link in the invitation to Dana's website and all the things that she does, which she's talked about tonight. And if there's burning questions, I'll take a couple. Otherwise, I'm going to move us through. Does anyone have any burning questions? Go back to here. Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hello. Thanks for speaking to our club, Dana. I appreciate it. I was just looking at your bio at your law firm, which describes the focus of your work as defending property owners and contractors against high exposure personal injury matters. Mm-hmm. And I was somewhat concerned about how that seems to be not the same set of issues as expanding justice to individuals and tenants' rights, which is a big issue for Grand Street Democrats in general. Mm-hmm. Could you speak to that potential?
Sure. Well, yeah, thank you, Ian. And I mean, I think one of the main reasons why I'm taking this step and leaving the firm where I was, honored to be made partner at a young age is because I'm not helping people through my work, that I am helping through my extracurricular activities, so to speak. And I want to do that more. Everyone deserves a right to representation. Like many other now sitting judges who we know to be, progressive and amazing judges. I have experience on both the defense side and the plaintiff side. And I think no matter who you represent, no matter what type of case it is, as an attorney, you have an obligation to advocate for your client. And sometimes you don't get to choose who that client is. But, I'm taking this next step so that I don't need to, I won't be in the role of adjudicating for an individual person, but rather I could be in the courtroom where I can make sure that everyone who appears in court, whether they're a plaintiff, they're a defendant, whether they're there voluntarily because they brought a case or involuntarily, has the same access to justice and a fair judge that will listen to both sides and be compassionate and move their case along and give them a right to be heard, give them the chance to be heard.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, yeah, Dana, leave your contact info.
I will.
And if anybody wants to have further conversation, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Marion.
Okay, so you'll notice on your OPA vote, there is an opportunity to vote for an endorsement for Dana or not, as you like. One more kind of pep talk for endorsements. Lee Berman, our male district leader. I saw that Lee came in. Are you here?
I am here.
Good. Let's hear you talk, Lee.
Sure. Hi, friends, neighbors, and fellow Grant Street Democrat members. I'm here to humbly ask for your endorsement to continue representing you as district leader. With your endorsement, we can continue working together to represent our community, to hold our elected officials and city agencies accountable, to let them know how important fighting for affordable housing, the environment, East River coastal resiliency, better transportation, safer streets, reducing crime, homelessness, help for mental health, funding for our seniors, our NORCs, our schools, and our food insecure is to all of us. We're also fighting to make sure that the Manhattan County Democratic Party and the state party know what's important to us and that they join us in making sure all of our voices are heard. With your support, I look forward to continuing to work together with Grace Lee, Chris Marte, Dan Goldman, Brian Kavanagh, Mark Levine, and others, representing this community that I've called home for the last 55 years, a community that lacks representatives that reflect so many of our neighbors who have lived here all of their lives and are part of the working middle class who also live paycheck to paycheck. I would be honored to have your support. Thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, any quick questions for Lee?
I don't have a question, but I just got a statement, like on behalf of Lee and Carol. I also coordinate election site, and I have to tell you, in their role as a district leader, they are really, really on point with that. Their job is to facilitate the election process, and they're always there, to help us in the neighborhood. If there's a problem, because BOE sometimes misdirect voters or causes some kind of other craziness. But Carolyn and Lee have just been really, really great and supportive of that whole process. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And thank you, Lee.
Thanks, Sandra.
I want to say that we want to hear some more things about what's coming up for the club and election issues, but all the voting questions have already come up. So please remember to vote while you're still on, and hopefully we'll have results by 9 o'clock. Sandra, you want to talk about electioning, petitioning, all the things we have left to take care of on that route?
We're pretty much in good shape, right? Basically, after tonight's vote, we'll have everything that we need to complete the petition. And then the petition, gets sent to the printer. But I think the only thing outstanding is some county committee members, right, Marion? Other than that, we'll have everything else that we need after the OPA vote tonight. But as we learned tonight, since Grace has her inauguration on the same day, we may have to change our petitioning kickoff day. But as it is, it's March 5th. But like I said, once tonight is done, we'll be able to, I spoke to Jeremy tonight, we'll be able to send it out to the printer in the next couple of days. So we're in good shape.
Great. And just, I want to follow up with what Sandra said. We want everyone to petition, get petitions signed. We want to ask all county committee members that are named on the petitions, please get, I don't know, we talked about some number, 15 or 20 or 30, 20 or 30 petition signatures so we can make it go through. Also, Sandra, I think we don't change the date. Maybe we put it an hour earlier. We'll decide that as an executive committee,
right.
and then we don't want to wait later than that because we
Right.
want to get people's first signature.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandra. And Sandra does really all this work on taking care of electioning. So, other than
one more thing I want to say. Someone mentioned earlier, I forgot who it was, maybe Harriet, about voter registration. I think that's really important. I really want to put together some kind of voter registration drive or some kind of event. You know, we were going to do an election committee, but that may have, be on hold for the moment. But I think it really would be a good idea to do some kind of voter registration drive.
Agreed. That's a great
If anyone
idea.
has any ideas, please reach out to me. I'd like to work with you if you'd like to. Thanks.
Okay, Kathryn Freed is going to give us just some updates on judicial delegates, alternates convention, and Chief Judge Laskow.
Okay, well, I think Senator Kavanagh kind of went over the Chief Judge Laskow thing.
Mm-hmm.
It originally died in the Senate committee, and then the Republicans are suing, saying it has to be a full Senate vote. They may win that on the law, but it'll be a Pyrrhic victory because I still don't think that they have enough votes to defeat Laskow, and therefore Hochul will probably have to come back with another candidate. That's pretty much that update. As far as judicial convention delegates and alternates, we're still working with the downtown independent Democrats this year as to who gets how many delegates or alternates, because in the last gubernatorial election, the number of people voting actually went down in this area, the entire 65th. We get less delegates and alternates than we did in past years. So the entire 65th Assembly District gets 9 delegates and 9 alternates. And we've had a formula before. Right now, it looks like we've got Lee Berman, Harriet Skidelsky, and Diego Segolini as delegates if we get 3. If we get 2, it'll be Lee and Harriet. Diego drops down to be the first alternate. And then Lucas Christensen, who's a new Grand Street member, is running as an alternate. If we get the 3, delegates, then Marion Rydell will be signed on as our last alternate. And I would ask you to vote for all of them in the OPA vote. And essentially, the delegates, the judicial delegates and alternates meet in a judicial convention. I think it's between August 10th and August 16th, somewhere in that time, to pick who the Democratic nominees will be for state Supreme Court in the general election. And that's what the judicial convention does. Actually, we're thinking of trying to put together of some kind of talk later in the year to explain to people what that's about, why it's important, and to get people really interested and understand that we have a unique system in Manhattan, because we do require that our candidates get reported out of an independent judicial screening panel and be rated highly qualified. And although it's got some glitches occasionally, it does result in a really higher quality of judges. And this was something that was initiated through the reform clubs in Manhattan, and it's still one of our greatest, I think, achievements. That's it, unless there's some questions.
Thank you so much, Kathryn. Any questions? Okay, I want to announce 2 things. March 5th, We're going to have our petitioning kickoff. It'll be at Salugi's. I'm thinking, I'm kind of making if anyone disagrees with this, I'm thinking we'll go to noon instead of 1, so that anyone who wants to go to Grace's inauguration can do both. And it sounds like it's a great place to get petitions signed. We'll confirm that. I have to talk to Salugi's and make sure that time will work. Also, we're going to have our March general meeting on March 13th, 7 to 9. We still haven't decided if it will be in person or Zoom. Depends on the situation of, if there's a surge in COVID or not at that time. We will certainly let you know. I think that's it. Kenny, do we have people voted already? Do we have outcomes?
People have voted, but there's 3 minutes left, so there's nothing. There's nothing to report at. There's nothing to report at the moment, but there will be in a couple minutes.
Anything else anybody wants to raise while we're waiting for the 3 minutes so we can get the report out? Made a lot. This was a very I don't know.
Mary,
full of
I think I read in
information.
one of the GIST emails, the voter change to party registration is tomorrow. If you want to switch to.
Yes, February 14th is the last day you can change your party for early voting for primary registration. So if you have any intention of doing that, is it just party? Is it also address or affiliation or anything? I think it's just party affiliation. But anyway, it's tomorrow, so you can do that and then you can go on your Valentine's date. Anything else? Did people like having a lot of people here and a lot of information? Did people find that helpful? I'm going to put the gallery on so I can see what people are saying about that.
I think it's fun. It's a bustling meeting, but it's good to hear from everyone.
Okay, so we'll try to get Dan Goldman next time. I think we'll invite Mark Levine next time. We haven't heard from him in a while. And for the March 13th meeting. And yes, Julie, happy Galentine's. Everyone knows that tonight is in fact Galentine's Day. And Julie gave up her normal soiree with her friends to join us here tonight. So thank you very much for that, Julie.
Thanks,
revealing
Julie.
my secrets. We're gonna all get together on Wednesday.
Oh, okay. There you go. There you go. That sounds good. Anything else that anyone has to bring up? So we liked having all those people. There might maybe a little better balance, right? We just haven't heard from anyone since the election because it's all gotten so crazy again.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe a little more balance would be good. I felt like it was a little overwhelming, but maybe that's because I was just trying to monitor it all. Kathryn, we're very thrilled to have you back on the slate as the state committee. Thank you very much for doing that. And I know you and Josh already have kind of a pattern of working together, so that'll be great. Tammy, I never saw you. I saw your face. I see your name, but I never saw your face. It's good to have you. And I know that Fanny and Danielle are working with Grace, so that's really exciting. Okay, it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm looking at the results. So Dana got our endorsement.
Okay.
I'm trying to go through these results. It's a little trying to read everything. Give me a second here. So civil court, Dana won. Female district leader, Carolyn got our endorsement. Male district leader, Lee got our endorsement. Our
Thanks,
slate,
everybody.
Our slate of judicial delegates got our endorsement. Our slate of, hold on, give me a second. Our slate of alternate judicial delegates got our endorsement. And female state committee, Kathryn Free, got our endorsement. I think that's it.
Great. Okay, so we're ready to move on to for petitioning. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everyone. And
Thank you, everybody.
Melissa, while
Thank you.
you're still on, Melissa, I wanted to say that I've heard from no less than 10 people that we have the best social media presence of any club in downtown, and that's Melissa. So thank you very much.
Well
for
done, Melissa. Thank you.
You're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Good night.
Good
let's
night,
go.
everybody.
Thank
Okay,
you.
buenas
Okay.
noches. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.